Baal Shem Tov is a mystic. About the year 5425, 1665, a group of mystics had banded themselves together, taking upon themselves the urgent task of trying to uplift and improve the spiritual position of the Jews. These mystics were of various types. There were some who were exceptional scholars and saintly men who chose to travel about incognito and wander in exile for the betterment of their souls and do penance for the sins on this earth. Others, also without revealing their identity, passed through the many towns and townlets where Jews lived, bringing with them that spirit of courage and hope of which the poor Jews were then so badly in need. This was still before the time when the Baal Shem Tov appeared on the Jewish scene. It was in the period following the terrible massacres of 54, 08, 09, 1648-49. Whole communities had been destroyed and despair was rampant among Jews in general who could not seem to get onto their feet. Because of the terrible poverty resulting, young Jewish children were compelled to do hard work, totally unsuited to their feeble strength and tender years. This they did either so as not to be a burden to their parents or in order to help support their parents. Obviously, under these conditions, no time or thought could be spared for the education of these unfortunate children. Many of them had to leave the chadarim and yeshivas, and in consequence they were growing up to be absolutely ignorant in book learning. Though the majority of them tried to keep Judaism, they knew nothing or next to nothing of the Holy Torah. The task of the mystics, therefore, was indeed a gigantic one, to visit these neglected children and their parents, wherever they were to be found, and try to imbue them with new courage and faith in their future. Thus, these mystics became their teachers and leaders, bringing them faith and consolation and learning. Their influence was incalculable. The Baal Shem Tov was born in the year 5458, 1698. Tradition has it that even at the tender age of 10, he attached himself to a group of mystics and wandered together with them among the Jewish settlements, helping in the aforementioned great and holy work of calling the Jews back to the service of the Creator. Later on, when he began to spread his new mode of Hasidism, he established, through the mystics, a whole network of activity in this connection. He wanted to prepare the ground first, and then later emerge publicly with his new Hasidic following. As we shall see in due course, the Baal Shem Tov, in his role of mystic, aimed to help Jews to improve their material position by urging them to get back to working on the land and to undertake other manual jobs which would make them self-supporting. Once he saw them established in the way he advised them, the more or less materially provided for, he set about seeing to their spiritual welfare. Many other stories told about the Baal Shem Tov in his youth and his adult years. It is known that when a young man, he was an assistant to a Melamed. He himself said of this period, "When I was a young teacher's assistant, I worked so hard to teach the young children to respect and love their parents. I always tried to point out and emphasize their good qualities." The Baal Shem Tov realized even then how necessary it was to create a strong bond between the children and their parents and elders. Under the difficult and trying times in which the Jews then lived, the parents had little or no opportunity of training or influencing their children, and so there was the ever-present danger of estrangement. This the Baal Shem Tov made every effort to combat by literally going from house to house, not like a beggar, although maybe dressed like one, but richly laden with his spiritual gifts. He used to gather around him as many Jews as possible outside in the open, where he used to stand and tell them endless stories and sayings of our sages, which he explained to his listeners in a clear voice and simple manner, which just captivated their hearts. Every tale the Baal Shem Tov told was woven through with love towards the Almighty and towards his people Israel. Everything he narrated contained some moral teaching. This was a great and noble task which the Baal Shem Tov had undertaken. For most of these poor Jews had no Beis HaMedrash to go to, and even those who had neither the time nor the opportunity to spare from their hard-working day to go to a Beis HaMedrash to daven or listen to a word of Torah. So it was to these ordinary, uneducated people that the Baal Shem Tov came, bringing the Torah to them.